Welcome back to Performance Starts Within. We are joined again by none other than Andrew from ThinkLoud. He's our podcast producer, and I've asked him to join us today to talk a little bit about, one, his experience and also share some mutual experiences about the blocks that we have going from 10K months in our business to 20K months. So thank you, Andrew, for dropping in and joining us.
You're welcome. Good to be back. Good discussion point. Good discussion point. You and I, again, as we do in between recordings, have spoken about all different kinds of things. And one of them being, what really creates the blockages between revenue brackets, let's kind of say. And I think a really common one is, 10 to 20K. I think for me, just kicking off, the difference between 10 and 20K is pretty big because 10K is like kind of just getting by in business. For me, I have a studio, I have an editor, I've got a VA, I've got all my personal expenses, my rent, my, food and, living expenses. And so 10K goes very quickly. In fact, my current overheads are more than 10K. So, just getting above that for me is like breaking even. And I think that's really quite interesting because at 10K, it's almost like a survival for a lot of people still. Maybe for some people that's 5K. Maybe they live pretty lean. They've got, a coaching business or they're a PT where they have very minimal overheads, or, they're an agency provider that everything is online. But regardless, it's like, what is it that keeps us in that place? Because I think it's quite easy to get to 10K a month just out of like grit and just...
I was going to say the same word. Yeah.
Almost just throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what works, again, depending on your service or what you offer, but it's a couple of clients. For me, it's, anywhere from 2 to 5 clients, not that much to ask. But bringing that in consistently, especially over the course of 6 to 12 months is where you start to learn about retention and how to provide a good service. Because if I, as an example, am running a business where I don't provide a good service, I can be very happy that 1 month I get, 5 new clients, but if I don't have a good service, that money isn't going to hang around and that's quickly going to dwindle. So, it's as business goes on, I think there are so many lessons that come with, what it takes to consistently maintain that kind of revenue. But yeah, the jump. So for someone who's sitting, maybe it's 5K, maybe it's 10K, and wanting to get into that threshold where there is more to play with, I guess. I think the idea of 20K plus feels quite nice. I don't know about you, but that idea feels quite nice. It's like, I've got money left in the bank at the end of the month. It's not all just like going. It's not all just disappearing in front of my eyes. So that's an interesting thing to look at, an interesting topic. What about you? Like what's I know I haven't really answered too much around my experience in going from there, what was in my way, whatever. But what is your story around money and income and, how to build a business financially? Because you had quite a good run in your last business. You had a very successful first 6 to 12 months. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to, one, you nailed it with the overheads. I think for me, when I got to my peak where I had a good team that was supporting me, I had like 8K going out every month in expenses, right? It was like a handful of VAs. It was the platforms you were using, subscriptions, coaching. The more money you had, it was almost like the more went out, right? And I feel like sometimes that's at the detriment as well, because the leaner you are, the more you have available to invest in the things that are meaningful or sustain you for longer. And so for me, for the first, say, 7 months, I hit that 100K very, very quickly in the business, out of pure hustle and grit at the start. The problem with that, it was not sustainable on the foundations I built it on. So I started very quickly. I'm a great salesperson, so I brought people into my world very quickly, and I got to a point where I was 4 months into business, didn't have a VA, but I had 26 clients, and they were all done for you marketing clients with projects that were going to take a month almost per person if I didn't get support or help, because I built the pipeline very, very quickly. And so for me, the hardest part I went from was I had to hire very quickly, but I also had to do it in a way that was sustainable to maintain the profit margin of at least 50% so that I still had some to pay yourself. And generally, most business owners that do this, and I know I've done this, is we pay ourselves last. And there's a lot of energetics that I'm learning about paying yourself last, that you actually don't value it. And so the more that you do that from the beginning, it kind of fizzles all the way through your business, and you're wondering why you're doing it in the first place. You can go get a day job, right? And do it there. So yeah, my experience was very much around, I didn't learn from a child the values of money or how the money worked in the world and how to hold on to money. And so when I got money and things came in with the business, for me to feel good, safe and secure and supported, my feelings were that I had to go out and bring people into my world to support it, but I may not have been ready for it where I was in my business at that time. So yeah, it was an interesting moment to go from hustle, 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 quickly I need to get people in to support me, to finally getting there, but barely breaking even. And then it was when I went and saw a mindset coach, and we started doing money stories, and we started looking at why is it that we are trying to put everything external to help support us? What is it that we need internally? What are the internal blocks that's actually going to help us hold on to energetically money rather than it going out the door all the time?
Yeah, I mean, that opens up a big and really important can, which is the money story, the energetics of money. And look, I probably, yeah, I definitely don't throw my hat in the ring of being an expert in money by any means, but I have been fascinated by what you're talking about, the energetics of money, understanding money as an energy source. And I've learned from two really good teachers when it comes to money. One is a guy named Ken Honda. He's a Japanese guy who speaks, his thing is money. He's written books about money and speaks all around the relationship and the energetics around it. And there was an exercise he did in a course that I did of his where it was like, if you were sitting at a table and on the other side of you was money, so say it was $100 note or whatever, something that represented money, what would it say about you? And how would it feel around you? And I think that's so interesting because if I'm in a place where I don't respect money or I abuse it, I get it, and maybe I'm scared of it. Maybe I'm actually, one thing I used to do a lot that I've gotten a lot better at is actually looking at my account, like opening up my bank account, because I would avoid it at the fear of there not being enough or anything at all in there, and so I would avoid it. And so if money was sitting across from me and it felt that I was scared of it, well, how would the money feel and what would that want to do? It wouldn't want to be there. And so that's a way of, pushing it away, essentially.
Yeah.
Going, I'm scared of you. No. Like, I'm just going to avoid you. And so what then happens is we either get rid of it or we don't make it.
That's
Which I
such an
think is
interesting one, isn't it? Because I feel like energetically, you also close the door off to possibilities and opportunities because of that. And that's also capping your potential, that ceiling, and creating problems. And so if you've got that mindset, 100%, I agree with the energetics of money, that I learned that money was bad, that people with money were selfish, that it would always just disappear. That was the lessons I had growing up around money. And so if you come through life and get to a point where you have lots of money at one point, all of a sudden, all you're wanting to do unconsciously is get rid of it. And so it's really important to see in some clients and some of the experiences in my business as well is, what is it that we need to unlearn in this part? What is it that the lessons that got us to 10K have worked and served us purpose now that we need to potentially unlearn because they're no longer helpful to get us to 20? And one of those things was money, like the relationship with money. And then the second one was also looking after myself. Because like you said, grit got me to 100K very quickly, but grit wasn't going to get me to 20 because I was already exhausted. And so I had to pull the reins back in and start looking on what can I do to support the internal foundations and also like the exhaustion that I had to help me get that. And part of that was reducing my hours. That was adding extra daycare days. I have a 2-year-old. And then also things like a mindset coach that helped support the process between the two, that would help with reframing when you are having moments of weakness as well.
Yeah, and I think one thing I've learned recently is there is a dance between the, as you kind of refer to, the internal state, so how we feel, our state of mind and where we're at energetically, and then also the action part. And I think I, for a long time, got very caught up in probably more so the mindset and the energy side of things. And I think there is a really fine balance. And how I've seen that play out for me is, focusing on all of the consuming the information and personal development and understanding money and journaling and all of that kind of stuff is great. And I think you've said this on another episode where it's, it can become an avoidance tactic. It's like, oh, I'll just, do this and do this and do this. I'll plan and I'll strategize and I'll write and I'll do heaps of the things that I want to do or that is comfortable, and not enough of the stuff that's actually really going to move the needle. I think we all have those things. We all have those strengths and we all have those weaknesses. You're really great at sales. Like, sales is your thing. And selling is, you could say one of the most important things, but if we look at all the key pillars, they're all equally as important. But sales brings money in the door. It does. But then what's around sales? Well, then you've got to fulfill. Then you've got to do the thing. You can sell till the cows come home, and then it's like you say, a month's worth for 26 clients, a month's worth of work for 26 clients. How am I going to do that? That then leads into subpar performance, subpar results, because you're trying to juggle so many different things. And, that then becomes a blockage. That then becomes a huge blockage that you can't move forward through. For me, I actually had the opposite problem. I constantly question the quality of the work that I do. That's a real big thing for me, where I go, is my thing good enough? What's funny is I do get glimpses of it is, and it's a really good product, and I hear it from people who I respect, and they go, you do really great work. But in that doubting of the work that I do, I doubt my ability to sell, because I don't want to come off as inauthentic. I want to be authentic and I want to be confident in the things that I sell. But if I doubt the quality of my work, that stops me from selling, and selling with conviction as well. And so I don't sell. Not good at selling because of that reason.
Interesting. We'd make a great team.
It would make a great team. Yeah. And with that too, I don't market, because marketing is sales as well. And so I have this problem of a lack of lead flow, you know? So it's very interesting to look at. There are so many things that cause, these problems for growth, but they're actually quite simple and easy to solve.
99% of them are confidence.
Mm.
Because when someone starts, when they are really into, and you may have experienced this starting like your studio, it's a passion. You're excited, you're on the high, and no one's going to convince you out of what you want to do.
Yeah.
I've gone through this multiple times. When I first joined the police, I was adamant I was graduating. Don't care what anyone else says. I was graduating, and I did, and nothing stopped me. I also had the naivety of a 19-year-old. I hadn't quite developed consequence or seen what that looks like, and remembering we learn everything we see and hear and experience. So I feel like as we go through into, I'm now in my 30s, I am a little bit more susceptible to the input of other people because of experiences that have been planted in. And so when we're starting businesses, first time round, no problem. Second time, no problem. But the third time, you hear other people and that doubt comes back in because of that confidence. And I kind of feel that's where a lot of people get with that 10K to 20K. They're so into it for the first 10K because they're just going and going and going, and it's exciting. And then they get to a point where they might get negative feedback, or the pipeline's empty, or they get something that happens because it naturally comes up around that 6 to 12 month mark that kind of knocks them about a bit, and they don't have the internal foundations to manage what that is. And so they go on this spiral of that internal, I'm not good enough story. It needs to be perfect. I need to do more. Maybe they lapse their boundaries and give clients more than what they should. Maybe they're trying to people please them. And so there's a really big gap between the selling and the fulfillment in many businesses because of that reason. They'll lower the pricing and all of that. And so a lot of people that go to that 20K really easily is because they just back themselves so much. They bring the support in the right time, funny enough, in the right time. And they've had less experiences in the bad side of business as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that naturally happens, because you also fall out of the new business category where people are a lot less forgiving too, right? You work with a new business and you see a new cafe open, food's slow, but they're 6 weeks old. Let's, you go back 12 months later, they still got the same problems. Not good enough. I'm never coming back. Very different kind of relationship there. And, rightly so, as a business, you've got to adapt and grow quickly and all of that kind of stuff. But I also think, being the new person on the block, you have that, everyone's pumped for you, and then that fades. And then I think there is an idling period. There is like a real, and it can feel very hamster wheely of first 10K, 10K, like consistent, maybe, 7K. So maybe it goes down a bit, and then it just, and there's a lot of, I hear a lot of sayings of like, if you can get through the first 5 years in business, then you'll just like boom, or, some people say the first couple of years, whatever. But you're right. It's that first adversity that really tests where you're at. Yeah, and really knocks you down and tests the foundations to go, is your business built on sand, or is it built on bricks? And I think that, unless for whatever reason you've got incredible outside support, amazing resources, maybe you do grow up in a family that's very entrepreneurial and very, smart and diligent. I think that the silent majority of people will inevitably fall flat on their face at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I honestly think that every business will be built on stand unless they are with somebody or around somebody that has taught them, no, you don't do sand, you do this instead.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they just do what they believe you're meant to do. They just see, like, I honestly think if I had, I have this, I laugh at this reel that I watch all the time where there's a comedian that says, imagine if I had a loving husband that I came home to and supported me and helped me grow, I would be making so much money or so successful in my career. And I feel like that's the same with a coach. Like if you had a coach who had been there, done every mistake you could think of, and now knows this is how you should start, your business would go so quick to 20K because you know that you've skipped the sand. But we don't know that because we don't know. So
Sure.
everyone kind of comes together in that same space. And also on the flip end, if they know that it's not sand, they will build the foundations correctly, but it takes a long time. And so a lot of people will quit because it's boring. They'll quit because the foundations are lead generation and marketing and foundations, and it's the day-to-day tick the boxes in the business, and it's not the high stuff that most people want. They want to feel excited and inspired, like, yeah, I'm growing and building. But if you're only making like 1K, 2K, 3K, and it's like this slow increase, it's not exciting to a lot of people. It's not like they've made 100K in a year.
Sure. Yeah.
I saw this in my day job as well. So working in sales, I used to run a team of sales consultants in travel, and there were people that had been around for a couple of years who did extremely well. Most people do extremely well in their first year, and that's purely because it's exciting. It's new, they're learning, they're getting people in, they're, getting the swing of it. But there's always naturally a dip round about that 6 to 8 month mark because they're just bored and tired, and they are lapsing all of the foundations that they didn't build in the start. And so the work is catching up on them around about that 6 to 8 month mark. And then having to, because I don't have a VA, get stuck in the admin and the back end and all of the follow up and all the other stuff that kind of stops them from selling. And then their numbers dip. And then they feel disempowered because it might be the case that maybe their leaders aren't familiar with that cycle. And so they're more questioning the number rather than looking at the variables and looking at that life cycle of what happens in your business. And so that's kind of where we look at with clients as well on, it's not just a number, there's a story. So let's look at the variable that's bringing in, not to make excuses, but can we map out what that energy cycle is in that 10 to 20K month? Because there's going to be times you're on extremely high. There's going to be times that you're rock bottom low. What do you need on the low so we can bring them up to sustain it? What support can we bring in so that when you're not doing your best and you're potentially sabotaging part of your business because you are dysregulated, what things do we have to bring in to keep maintaining that level so it can continue to go up and you can step back and take some rest? Did you know when you went from 10K to 20, like, did you see it before you saw the numbers?
So my business, because I'm just trying to think. When I started my agency, which was 2 years ago, I'd already had experience in the same kind of business, and so I'm just trying to think. Like, it's so funny. Like, I feel like I was better at business when I was like 21 than I am now. And although it's not true, there's a concept called the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know if you've ever heard of it before, but it states that the less you know, the more you think you know, and the more you know, the less you realize that you don't actually know. And so when you know less things, there's less, potential things that can go wrong. There's less things to consider. It's just like, go. Like, it's just, oh, there's a client. Oh, there's a client. Oh, there's a client. Oh, I'll just do that work and I'll just invoice that person and whatever. And so for many years, I didn't really run an effective business. I just had heaps of clients and I just would do a ton of shoots for people in all different industries. And, I had an amazing time, got to travel the world, shot in probably about at least 20 to 30 different industries and, just kind of went with the flow. And so I pretty quickly got to a decent level financially. Don't ask me about anything else, but I think, so I'm trying to think about the point where maybe I wanted to scale, but I couldn't. And I don't think I think I was just always busy. And so, and being young, I didn't have a family. wasn't really like, I didn't really have any big financial goals. I was just kind of like rolling with it and happy to kind of go. Where I'm at now, one of the big blockages for me, which it wasn't until I jumped on a call with a sales guy for a business coaching program, was that I was playing my business casually, and it wouldn't have clicked with me if I hadn't had a sales call with a lead that had come through, where I sat down and I was talking to this guy. He's a really nice guy. We connected really well. He was really authentic. He ran a buyer's agency in Sydney. And he was like, man, I saw your ad. You know, I come from the Facebook ads world. It like really spoke to me. I loved it. You know, this guy was like sold. And then when I asked him, you know, what's his plans? What does he want to do with the podcast? He was like, oh, I think like I've thought about doing a podcast, but you know, I more so just wanted to see what it was all about and this and that. And so him and I just like kept chatting. I didn't direct the conversation at all. I just was like, this guy's cool to chat to. And then we finished the conversation and we went on our merry way and we never spoke again. And when I brought that up in the sales, in the call with the coaching program, he was like, you're playing your business casual, and so you're attracting in casual people, and casual people don't buy. Casual people don't want to buy. And also, like, I gave this guy no reason to buy, you know, because I was like, come in if you want, but also no worries if you don't want to come in. And I kind of, in some ways, I like running my business that way, where it's like, it's not forced. I'm not needy when it comes to sales. But I also need to be, you know, have more conviction in that I can really help people. And I think ultimately, if I see good in someone and I go, I think this could actually really help you, you know, having the confidence and the conviction to go, I think you should, you know, invest in this. But I didn't have that at the time. And then when he called out that I was playing casual, I was like, yeah, that hits a real sore spot. And that next month, I tripled my previous monthly revenue. And how that happened was because my energy shifted, and because I reignited this excitement for my business and a desire to actually want to grow and actually want to really invest in the right things. I had all of these people sitting on the outskirts, all these potential deals that had been kind of hovering around for, you know, up to 12 months. All these people who had considered doing podcasts, who were like, oh, we've got projects coming up and, you know, we want to use you. All of a sudden, they all just popped off. And I was like, that is not by chance. That is not just coincidence. That is, I got serious about my business. I committed to not playing casual, and that reflected in my business almost instantly. So, don't know what the point was of all that, but that's my story.
It's interesting because I had a similar experience in sales where I was just not feeling it at work. I was in the day job and I was unwell. My son was sick. We had a whole week off. And just energetically, it's like flat, right? And so naturally, when we feel shit, we're just not going to do very much in our business. We just take shitty action. You know, we call it the shit principle. You put shit in, you get shit out.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't doing the minimum to get your leads and sales and have those conversations. And naturally, I was casual with my conversions with my sales. And it's interesting on how much you actually know in sales. And I say sales I'm quite good at is because in the travel industry, I was working in the travel industry, we don't fulfill. We sell and we hand off to other wholesalers to fulfill. So I'm great at that. I don't have to worry about perfectionism about the performance or what I'm doing in my business. I can sell really well because I know what we sell is like top notch. Like you're going to get on an amazing holiday with this airline, this amazing resort. Everyone loves travel. So it's very easy to sell pleasure in that capacity. And so all I had to do was ask the right questions to get them to say yes. Because a lot of the time, money's not a huge issue when it comes to sales. It was making sure you ask the right question to take them from where they are to where they're going to be, which is actually paying you money. And I didn't realize how effective that is simply by asking them to pay. And same thing, as soon as I just got out of my funk and started asking people to pay, I'd just email them and say, hey, are you still going to this place? All of a sudden they'd respond and pay 20 grand. And it's like, it was so easy to do. And I say easy just because of the experience I've had. It's not easy in normal business sometimes.
Sure.
But just by asking the question, to ask them to pay or tell them the next step, you sometimes think they are going to say no, but they're actually sold. And so, like, from your experience with casual, I had the same experience with a PT where I was ready to go back and hit the gym post-baby, all ready, money in the bank. I had a budget in mind that I was going to spend over 12 weeks with this person one-on-one, and it fizzled out. There was no asking for payment. There was no contract. I'll send it to you. And I lost interest. And so when it came around to signing up 2 weeks later, kind of lost me already. So whereas at the start, you would have got me straight in.
That poor PT.
Poor PT.
Poor PT. So 3 key takeaways.
The journey between 10K and 20K is more about unlearning rather than doing more. It's all the inner work that you need to throw out the old clothes that you've been wearing, getting you to 10K, and you need new ones in that 10 to 20. Often it's getting rid of the old beliefs first that got you there to get you to the next one. That's number one for me. What's one for you?
Maybe we go with 2 because I feel like I'm going to struggle with 3. Definitely from this conversation, something that sticks out is, the action isn't hard. A lot of the times the action to get to the next level is not hard. It is purely just the story. It is the story that we say that blocks that action from happening. And I think like up until we know what that story is and know the kind of the root cause of it, it will just avoid the action. Or just won't do the action. Like, I think that's really important.
And sometimes it's just a cool story.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't even matter, right?
Yeah. That's my 1. What's your 2?
2 for me would be and I'm naturally good at this, but have the hard conversations. So asking and explaining what comes next with customers and leads. And what are they going to say? No. If you don't ask, it's a no anyway. So, casual business, as we talked about, is you have a great conversation with somebody, just sell them anyway and ask them and say, this is the next step. This is how much. How does that sound? Go through the process. And yeah, sometimes you need to learn the process first, which is fair. But yeah, the mindset will get in the way to stop us from going through the process. So getting someone that can help you move through that would be good.
Good one. I would say that my final one would be, I would say based on your last story about the PT, it probably highlights that, if someone's inquiring, if someone's coming through the door, if someone's showing interest, they're probably much more ready to buy than if I put my lens on and the story that I will generally say of like, what if they don't want it, whatever, probably much more ready to buy than what you believe. And maybe it's just one question away from, closing that sale, getting that lead across the line. I think that's pretty significant. I think that's something I've always undervalued is, if someone's filling in a form, especially these days, because like it's hard to generate interest in the age that we're in, or in the times that we're in. If someone's going to go to the trouble of filling out a form, they've probably thought about it a lot, and they're finally taking that step, and they're coming to you probably because they want to be guided towards working together. I would say, yeah, that's a good reminder. Is if they're coming through the door, they are ready to be guided, and they will probably buy.
Interesting question for you. Have you ever walked into a travel agency and not wanted to travel?
No.
There you go.
There you go.
Thank you again for joining us in the co-host chair. Until next time.
Until next time. You're welcome.